Welcome to the Sapphic Gaze podcast. I am your host, Nisa, and joining me today is your co-host and my partner, but not in a gay way, Ellie.
Okay, best intro ever. Well, that perfectly sets the tone. Partners in crime and Sapphic literature, but
Not in a gay way.
Not in a gay way. I'm sure your wife and my fiance would be thrilled.
That we're partners, but not in a gay way.
Yeah, nothing about the fact that there's 4,000 miles between us. Something like that.
You know what? With how lesbian relationships go, though, I mean, I've heard some pretty crazy stuff.
Oh god, I can only imagine you meet on like one night out and then all of a sudden you're moving across the country, across the ocean, moving in together.
Would that even be? That wouldn't be U-hauling. That would be like cargoing, freighting.
Why is that not a phrase? Is that a phrase? That needs to be a phrase.
We can create it. We just did right now. Trademark, copyright,
Wow.
all of that.
Yeah.
Freighting. That is the new lesbian term. Moved countries for it.
Yeah, especially because we don't have U-hauls in the UK, so like it's such a redundant term here.
How does that work, though? If you don't have U-hauls in the UK, is U-hauling even still a term?
Yeah, but we just call it like, I don't know what we call it. I mean, we still use the term U-haul, but it's like, it's not as snappy or effective because we don't have U-hauls. I can't literally go and rent a U-haul and move into my partner's house. I mean, I did that.
But you guys also don't have like trucks like the US either.
No, we have like the equivalent, like transit vans. Do you have transit vans in the US?
What is a probably?
You know, like the white vans you see on like all the British soap operas and things.
We have those, but usually we jest that they're the like creepy don't go near those vans, like painted with the free candy across it. Like, oh yes, we have them in the US, but
God. Okay, wow, I'm gonna let that sink in. Good to know that's where the British lie in the American public poll's opinion.
Sorry.
Oh my god, you should be. Just discredit my entire culture.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't come up with it, so okay. So moving on from that, today we are talking about ice queens, why we love them, why some of them don't really work, and kind of what they are. So, I mean, Elle, what is an ice queen for those of our readers or listeners that don't know?
I knew you were going to chuck that to me. It's so subjective. The way I think about ice queens is a stoic, stern, strong character who is able to be melted by a sunshine-esque love interest.
That sounds about right to me. I actually pulled the Google
of course
AI
you did.
Answer to it.
Where did I deviate?
No, I mean, you got it pretty much. Let's see. Often isolated with very few friends. And then resting bitch face holder, which I feel deep in my heart. It even said somebody who refused to be wooed or open her heart. I don't know if I agree with that, though, because they don't necessarily... I don't think they refuse to be wooed. I think it's more that they're a little bit harder to be wooed, and so it seems like they won't be.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think they're open to being wooed a lot of the time. They just don't necessarily advertise that they want to be wooed.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's already interesting right there, because I'm gonna already throw you kind of a hot take a little bit. I gotta ask, have you ever heard of an ice king?
Ooh, an ice king.
Because I have a few that I'm thinking of, and I haven't actually read either of these books, so I don't know for sure, just from like the 30 minutes I accidentally caught when it was on Max, and then just the whole unfortunate me watching the movies. But
I feel like you might be... We were about to say the same person.
Christian Grey and Edward Cullen.
Okay, I want to say Edward Cullen. I don't think he's an ice. I would say he pursued Bella.
I mean, did he though? Because that was his whole deal. Is like, I can't stay away from you. And also, Christian Grey is based on Edward Cullen. But regardless, Christian Grey, what?
You just what?
What?
No way. Christian Grey is based on Edward Cullen.
Oh my god, you didn't know this?
No.
Yes, 50 Shades no, 50 Shades started as a Twilight fan fiction.
Stop it.
No.
Didn't Twilight start as a fan fiction?
No, it didn't. It was just
my brain a little bit.
It's 50 Shades was a Twilight fan fiction. So Christian Grey is literally Edward Cullen.
Oh my god, you just broke my brain a little bit. I'm like now relating all the characters from the 50 Shades to the Twilight Saga.
Okay, well, but my point being, don't dwell on this. This is Sapphic. Stay gay. Got to stay in the gay mind frame here. So they are the same guy. But the thing I find interesting is that nobody calls them Ice Kings. So why do women have the Ice Queen trope?
Well, obviously, it's going back, way, way back, when women weren't allowed to have complex feelings or emotions, and we just had to be.
Well, but that's the thing, is a lot of the hallmarks to me of a really good Ice Queen is that she hides those feelings. Because for the most part, if you think about a lot of Ice Queens, they're usually women who you would almost classify as like a career woman, or somebody who's like a high achiever. And so they've pushed all those feelings a little bit farther down to be able to kind of preserve that image to like be in, I mean, I don't want to say it, but like to be in a man's world. But when they're acting like a man and not showing any emotion, all of a sudden they're icy, which is ironic because then if they do show a little bit of emotion, their male counterparts are going to be like, oh, you're too emotional. But they're just acting like men, so why don't we have Ice Kings? Because it's just, oh, they're just acting like a dude's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a man is supposed to be, strong and stoic and unemotional because he's a leader and can separate his feelings from his business practices or whatever. But women can't, so, apparently when they do that, they're an Ice Queen because they're unfeeling and unemotional.
Double standards.
Allegedly. I know.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I don't think this is on the record. You don't have to throw in allegedly.
It might come back to bite me in the arse at some point.
Okay.
Episode 1, cancelled.
I mean, if we're going to get cancelled over that, that's far better than for the opening intro there, where we went really off track about U-Hauls and freighting and all of that. I'd prefer to get cancelled over the allegedly.
An intelligent discussion.
Exactly.
But I actually never thought about it. I've never heard the term, have you?
I have literally never. When I started looking into books where I knew that, like, you had that icy kind of male character, I actually searched the term Ice King, and the things that came up were like Jack Frost, and I'm like, no, not literal Ice Kings.
I mean, you can see where Google would be confused.
But it wasn't confused when I put in Ice Queen. Although there were a few articles on Elsa, but that's neither here nor there. It did throw out Ice Queen as the term.
Okay, I need to know, in your Ice Queen research, what was like one of the top hitters? Like what came up most often or early on in the search results as an example of an Ice Queen?
You know exactly who it is because I'm pretty sure your favorite Ice Queen or one of them is based off of this character. Can you give a guess?
Oh, it's gonna be Miranda Priestley, obviously.
Bingo. That was the first one that popped up for the trope yeah, there you go.
I do love Miranda Priestley.
Oh man. Of course you do.
I need to brace myself. I feel like you're about to onslaught me with a Miranda Priestley.
I'm not onslaughting you with anything.
Except facts that hurt my feelings.
If facts can hurt your feelings, then you just have the wrong opinions.
Oh, you went there. Okay, fine. But do you like Miranda Priestley as an example of an Ice Queen?
As an example of an Ice Queen, yes. Do I think she's a very effective Ice Queen? Oh.
Okay, so if we set her aside from the film and if we look at who she's based on in books, have you read Truth and Measure?
No, I have not. You told me not to.
I did tell you not to.
You said that you did not like it, so I didn't read it.
I want to preface this whole podcast by saying these are just opinions. And obviously, these are just mine and Lisa's opinions. Don't say anything mean to the authors if we say we don't like something. It's a fun discussion. And so, yes, I did not like Vivian Carlyle in Truth and Measure. But I adored Miranda Priestley in Truth and Measure. So, for those of you who don't know, Rosalind Sinclair, the author of Truth and Measure, started out that book by writing a fan fiction based on the Devil Wears Prada film, also called Truth and Measure. And that version I adored. I gave that 5 stars on Goodreads, and it's currently on my 5-star shelf on my personal Goodreads account. I loved it. But then I read Truth and Measure, the published version, and it just was not for me. Vivian Carlyle was not an ice queen I could get on board with.
And actually, that's a really good kind of jumping off point for kind of the next topic I had is what, in your opinion, since you had said that you enjoyed one version but you didn't enjoy another, what is it about like Ice Queens that you would think makes one effective and lovable or likable at least versus like what doesn't work, and why did you kind of have those varying opinions about both versions?
So I think You the Truth and Measure is actually a really good example of this because the fanfic version was based on the movie, and Miranda Priestley has 2 twin daughters that are like, I want to say maybe 13, 14-ish. Anyway, she has 2 teenage daughters, and in the fanfic version, you really saw Miranda's soft side with her kids, but in the published version, Vivian Carlyle did not have children. And so we never got to see that softer side, and she was just constantly mean. And I think for me, that's, what makes a good ice queen versus a bad ice queen is when they have the ability to show you their softer side. And when you get to see them starting to melt, that's for me what makes a good ice queen.
Nice. I mean, I can't disagree. That's actually kind of what I like about a lot of the ice queens that are on my favorites list that we're kind of going to go over in a little bit, but is that it's not that they are like terrible people with no emotions. It's that they do have a lot of emotions. It's just because of, like, we were talking about that double standard earlier, because of that, they kind of have to pick and choose who they actually let see those emotions, because the way that they're being portrayed in their everyday lives is the image that they need to maintain to kind of just survive in the world. And so they're really choosy about who they let in. And so I think, to me, that's what really makes an effective ice queen, is not just that their love interest, like the sunshine character, can melt them, but it's that you do get that kind of insight that they do have people in their lives that they treasure and they already have, that they care about. So it's not like the love interest is creating that in them. It's that it's already there. They're just really, really picky about who's gonna see that side.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, you and I discuss a lot in our day-to-day conversations about ice queens and recommending each other good ice queens. And I feel like we always say the same thing, is that we want to see an ice queen with depth. And we want to see an ice queen that has layers. We don't want the superficial, like business bitch, being mean for the sake of it kind of ice queen. No, no, no. We want someone that's, got some stuff to work through. And we see them work through that in the book, and then we see them go through a proper character journey. And I think that's what we appreciate in our ice queens.
Exactly. I agree completely, wholeheartedly with that. So I guess now that we've kind of approached the topic, since we know that you have very differing opinions about 2 different versions of one ice queen, who are your favorite ice queens? Which ones do you think were the best, and which ones were the worst?
I've been waiting for you to ask me this.
You're like, I have a list.
Okay, I'm gonna just rattle off a few of my favourite ice queens.
Okay.
Elena Bartel from The Brutal Truth, which is also Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, Lee Winters, yeah.
Lee Winters, yeah. Margaret Blackwood from Vengeance Planning for Amateurs,
Ugh.
also Lee Winters. Catherine Ayres from The Red Files, Lee Winters. Can you sense a pattern here?
I'm starting to
Uh,
think you like Lee Winters as an author.
Maybe just a tad, yeah. Okay, aside from Lee Winters, who is Queen of Ice Queens, Magdalene Knox from The Headmistress,
Ugh.
Jennifer. Sorry, I'm sorry. What was that? We're coming back to that. Jennifer Dupont from The Lay of You, and Eva Thomas from Chemistry.
I have a problem with two of those.
I can't believe you just humped Magdalene. How dare you? I would say Magdalene is my top 2 Ice Queen favourite. I can't think of another one right now, but I know she's top of the top.
I said nothing.
What was that? That huff? Come on.
Okay. We've kind of talked about it because I just read Magdalene Knox.
Oh yeah, after I recommended that you read Magdalene Knox, because it is top tier, top 5 favourite books ever for me.
I did not like Magdalene Knox as a book. I thought it was good as like an addition to the headmistress, and like it elevated the headmistress, but as a standalone, I know you say it's part of a series, but as a standalone, I think it was kind of weak, and I think it weakened her as an Ice Queen. There, I said it.
Yeah, you did. Wow. The betrayal.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, why do you think it weakened her as an Ice Queen?
Okay.
Is it because she was softer in Magdalene Knox?
I mean, she wasn't just softer. She was... I kind of lost a little bit of respect for her. Reading... For those of you listening to the podcast and not on video, I'm getting a death glare, and I feel attacked. And I haven't even put my opinion out there. So...
This is a safe space, mostly.
I am safe because we are an ocean apart.
Yeah, I have some miles I need to use on my BA account, so...
Oh, good lord. So here's the deal about Magdalene. In The Headmistress, I really enjoyed her as an Ice Queen, and I think it was really effective just because you see her go from really closed off to, oh my god, her name escapes me. What's her love interest
Sam?
again? Sam, thank you. Literally read it like 2 days ago and I'm already forgetting. This is what happens when you get older. So you see her really closed off to Sam, and it makes sense why she's closed off. I mean, like, they had a, one night stand encounter. Obviously spoilers if anybody hasn't read the book. I'll try to keep them to a minimum.
To be fair, that's fine. That happens in the first chapter, you're fine.
Yeah. So they have a one night stand, and then Magdalene shows up for her new job as the headmistress, and boom, there's Sam at the faculty meeting. And so she has to contend with this, like, image of herself and what she has to do, and like her goals, which aren't immediately clear necessarily what her motives are for what's going on at the school. And so it's one of those where when you start to read that book, you see it from Sam's lens, where you can tell Magdalene is really struggling with how she's trying to accomplish her job, but then also contend with the feelings that she has about Sam. And so she comes off as very standoffish, and you really see externally that struggle. I think the reason for me why it feels like it weakens her as an Ice Queen is because it retcons a lot of that struggle. And you see from, like, the night they meet that Magdalene is taken with her, that the months between when they meet in New York and she shows up on the island, like, she's been thinking about her. Like, people in her life are like, oh, I can tell that something's on your mind. Like, George and her mother both comment on it. I think even her ex-husband might comment on it, that her mind doesn't seem where it is. I can't remember.
I think he made a comment about, like, something like, why are you not more excited about taking over dragons?
And so when you hear all of this internals and, like, everything it's very clear that from the get-go, she's already starting to go against a lot of what her feelings are about dragons and the school and what it is she's supposed to accomplish because of Sam. Like, she's already wanting to give so much to Sam. And I guess for me, seeing it from her point of view, it didn't seem like there was a lot of work Sam had to do. Sam just needed to exist, and boom, she was already melted. Like, she didn't actually Ice Queen at all. A lot of that internal monologue is her, like, oh, I love Sam so much, and I can't tell her that. And she even, at one point, it's so gross to me. She says in her inner monologue that she can't wait for the day that she can tell Sam that she fell in love first, like it's some competition. Like, that's, come on, tell me that's not gross.
I don't think it's that bad.
Maybe you just haven't read it recently enough, because
I think I read it like a week before you did.
This is true. This is true.
I completely get what you're saying, and I think, had I not have read The Headmistress first, I would have an issue with Magdalene Knox as a standalone novel. But I think that having already had that perspective from mainly Sam's POV, from the Headmistress, I appreciated that she wasn't necessarily alone in her feelings that entire time. Because I think the Headmistress, you kind of got the sense that Sam was head over heels, and it was Sam leading the charge into, you know, their love romance, that kind of thing. But I think it was actually refreshing to see that actually, no, Sam might have loved Magdalene, but Magdalene also loved Sam back. And I think it just made their love story more, I don't know, wholesome and more on equal footing. It wasn't one person falling head over heels and it being unrequited.
Yeah, but when you go into an Ice Queen story, are you looking for wholesome necessarily? No, truly, like, no, you kind of do want to see that struggle of, like, the sunshine character melting the Ice Queen, and hearing that Magdalene was into Sam right from the get-go, it does kind of defeat the purpose. It kind of makes you wonder, was she an Ice Queen, really?
Well, I think she was an Ice Queen to everyone but Sam. Everyone else, she was aloof and standoffish, especially with, like, her ex-husband and, oh my gosh, what was her name? The old headmistress she replaced. Orla? Yeah.
Yes.
Orla. She was, you know, quite standoffish to them. Even George, like her secretary, who was her best friend, she still had little patience for her. And I think that Sam did melt her. Whether, you know, it be through love or whatever, Sam had an effect on her in some way that made her less of an Ice Queen.
And I think again, that also is another point, because you bring up that George, her best friend, she had very little tolerance for. And I think that's another thing, because we see in Magdalene Knox that she really is annoyed with George. Like, she seems like she just, the running commentary of how she feels about George makes me wonder, are they actually friends? And that's again where I say is, like, I feel like the hallmark, to your point about, was it Vivian Carlisle? The hallmark of an Ice Queen is you need to see that there is that softer side with not just the main character love interest. And you don't see it in Magdalene Knox, because in the Headmistress, you could kind of see, like, oh, well, she kind of does care about, like, George, and she has that softer side with George, and a little bit with her ex-husband Timothy. But that's the thing, is when you look at it from Magdalene Knox, she just shows open annoyance, like, for both.
Everyone except the cat.
The fucking cat. Yes, everyone except the cat. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the part of the story that's told from the cat's perspective.
Oh my god, yeah, it has a whole epilogue from Ruby's perspective.
So I guess that's my thing, is, like, that is where, like, how long was George with her? Like, 10 years?
Oh, easily. I want to say more.
At least a decade. And so you're like, okay, well, it hasn't shown me any of her softer side. And actually, this is to my point too. I think it would have been a far more effective story if we would have used a lot less time just rehashing things that we had already seen and going back and showing, like, what caused all those walls to be built, what is her motivation, for coming back to the school and kind of having this chip on her shoulder. Like, it's mentioned, but it doesn't really dive deeply into that in any way that I feel like adds to that story. And then you don't see any of her history with George, and so like when she is pulling away from George and kind of going towards more spending time with Sam, it's like not super impactful because we didn't see any of that. I feel like if we would have taken that book and really had like an in-depth character jump into Magdalene, as you know, she is a kid at school getting ostracized for, you know, her eye color, or the fact that she didn't have a dad, or that she is a lesbian, or I guess maybe bisexual. So, and her struggling with that bisexuality, or like when Timothy does leave her, or cheats on her and she leaves him, and then she really forms that attachment with George and how George is her rock. Like, I feel like that would have been a more effective story, and you could have had it as a standalone, which is why, like, when I think about this story as compared to something like what is it? If I Don't Ask, like, I think that was a much better switch on the POV to the other Ice Queen kind of.
Well, yeah, because If I Don't Ask started on their first deployment, whereas Don't Ask
Exactly.
started on their second deployment.
Exactly. And so you go back and you're not just viewing all of the events from now the flip point of view. You actually start to learn more about who Rebecca is from like an earlier standpoint, who she is as her own person and not as she relates to the main love interest.
It kind of pains me to agree with you. Like, I love Magdalene. I will forever love Magdalene, the character and the book. But I do perhaps wish that maybe we did get a little bit more of her life pre-Sam. I mean, I know I think it was the first chapter, we saw her being kicked out of dragons, but it was kind of like more like a prologue. It wasn't anything in depth.
I think it was like 2 pages basically of her like standing on the rocks, like looking out, and then I don't remember which teacher is with her, but they are like
the art teacher.
Yeah, they're like, "Are you ready to go?" Like, "Oh, okay. What a prologue." She gets kicked out. That's all we know. And she's upset about it. But I mean, she's an angsty teen at that point. Aren't they upset about everything?
Okay, who's on your list? Who's your favorite Ice Queens?
Okay, so I actually only have 2. And I wanted to keep my list small. So the 2 that I liked the best were actually, you know what? Now that I think about that, since I've made this list, there is one other Ice Queen that I could add to it. But I like Margaret Blackwood from Dungeons Planning for Amateurs. And then this one's shocking because I make this statement specifically about how she is as an Ice Queen and living into that trope, not necessarily about the book itself. Though I did enjoy the book, and I hate to say it because it's one of those where you and I had actually talked about the author quite a bit and said that she's the queen of Ice Queens. I liked Amelia Duxton from Hotel Queens.
Interesting. I know, I too liked Amelia.
Exactly.
But, okay, interesting. Why did you like Amelia and not... Is it Kai, the other Ice Queen?
Yes.
Because that's a book based on 2 Ice Queens falling in love, right?
Yes. But actually, I don't think Kai is that much of an Ice Queen. She seems more like a sunshiny character to me. When we open the book, right, the first thing we learn about Amelia is that she is supposed to be like this cold-hearted woman. She's firing somebody from the company who is a family member. And like when he's trying to curry favor because they're family, she's just having none of it. And she seems really closed off. And in everything that you're told, like, that is her thing. Everybody is thinking that she has no feelings and she just is all about business. And to me, that really shows that double standard right there, is because in any other context, if she was a man who was like making calls specifically that are best for the business and not based on any feelings, she would have already been the CEO of that company. And actually, that is one of the biggest points in that book, is that she's not the CEO. And her dad, they were trying to hand it off to her brother. Eventually, they give it to the cousin that she fired. And so it's one of those where it's like, they are finding literally every reason not to give her this CEO position, despite the fact that she should be the one doing it and that she's putting in the work. And so when we see that, like, she is trying to make herself as perfect as she can for this position, to the point where she goes into another hotel and she starts, like, doing all the positions so that she can be a better leader, because now she understands what is it that these people go through on a day-to-day basis. And so that's where I think, like, perfect example of that double standard. But because of that, because she's been so focused on her career, and she's already been kind of passed over for these larger positions, she's really closed off to the idea of love. And again, spoiler alerts for anybody who hasn't read it, but we find that the reason that she has been passed over isn't even just because of that iciness. It's because she is a lesbian. She did have a Sapphic romance, and it came out, and her father is homophobic and is like, well, I can't really put a lesbian in charge of my company. And it's one of those where you get the idea of why she is the way she is. And I guess the reason I think about Kai kind of being more that sunshiny character within the context of the book is because she is a bit more playful. Like, she's just as driven as Amelia, but she is playful. She flirts, she kind of tries to joke around and get underneath Amelia's skin. Yeah, and she does have, like, the friends and kind of that support system behind her. She's very close with her boss, where it's almost like he's like a father figure to her. And so she does show those softer sides, whereas Amelia is, like, solely focused on trying to get to be the head of this company. And so that's why I kind of think she's a really effective Ice Queen, because she embodies everything about the trope.
Oh, do you know what? I hadn't even considered Amelia, and now I'm kind of like, I think I need to add her to my list.
Yeah, I tried to look at characters and not just the books, because I did enjoy that book. It probably wouldn't make, like, my top 10 list, but it is a good book. But she is an exquisite Ice Queen, in my opinion.
I think that's what me with Eva Thomas in chemistry. I really enjoyed the book. I wouldn't say it's one that I've, reread or plan to reread, but from an Ice Queen perspective, I think she was a really engaging character. I also think I really enjoyed it because she had that whole thing where she only melted when she had the anonymity. For those of you that don't know, she was speaking to someone online that she knew in real life but didn't know that they actually knew each other. And it was kind of like she let her guards down when she thought that no one knew who she really was.
And isn't that such an interesting one too, especially in, like, the online dating age, where you feel more comfortable behind, like, your device when there is a little bit of anonymity. And
For sure.
The second she has to confront her love interest, not in that anonymous fashion, she pretty quickly shuts down. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Ice Queens that we liked, and I went on my little Magdalene Knox rant of Ice Queen that I didn't think was super effective. But I know I did ask you, tell me an Ice Queen that you just couldn't get behind whatsoever.
I only have two. I tend to love Ice Queens. They are, like, top tier trope for me. So I don't tend to come across them that I don't like often. The only two that I found was Vivian Carlyle from Truth and Measure, the published version. And it's going to be a controversial one. I think you and I agree, based on discussions, but the wider community, I feel like, won't necessarily understand this. Requiem from Requiem for Immortals.
She is on my list of Ice Queens that I do not enjoy. I have her and then Victoria from The Music in the Mirror.
Interesting. Okay. Why don't we necessarily think Requiem makes a good Ice Queen?
Okay, I want to hear your take on it, because I'm sure that we probably are going to align on a lot.
I think there is
I feel like you're trying to be diplomatic on our own podcast. You can do the disclaimer and say that it's just your opinion. Something controversial is about to come out of your mouth.
This is just my opinion, and Lee, you will never hear this, but if anyone ever tells you about it, I love your writing, and I love 99.9% of your characters. Requiem is not one of them. I think there is a difference, and some authors do this terribly. Not Lee, but in general, I've seen a lot of authors not do this well. There's a difference between being an ice queen and being abusive towards your partner. And it is not cool, it is not swoon worthy, it is not a good character trait to make them abusive or coercive or just plain nasty to their significant other. And I think that's where Requiem did not work for me. I understand that because of the nature of the book, for those of you that don't know, she is an assassin. So right off the bat, red flag.
Wait, are you telling me that being a murderer is not something that you look for in a potential mate?
Can't say I put it on my, I'm looking for in a partner list when I found my partner. But then again, I do feel like if my partner now committed a murder, I might provide an alibi.
I mean, of course, you got to be your partner's ride or die.
Yeah, I totally am. Although she's like, my partner is the most sunshine person you'd ever meet. She's a Labrador. She wouldn't hurt a fly. Anyway, Requiem, on the other hand, would hurt a fly. She would hurt several. I just think that I can't remember what is the other woman's name in Requiem for Immortals.
Allison. Well, her last name's Ryan, and so for most of it, she goes by Ryan, and I don't think she goes by Allison actually either. I think that's her proper name, because she's a detective or whatever.
But yeah, Requiem just seemed abusive and just nasty. And I think there was maybe a few paragraphs. I remember I was on my way to a barbecue in the summer reading it, and I was on the bus, and she showed a tiny bit of humility, and I gasped. I should not be gasping when she's nice. Like, if that's a character trait, I don't want to read about it. And then what really got to me is I don't want to ruin the ending for anyone that wants to read it.
Ruin it. Don't ruin it. Don't do it. Find a way to do it without ruining it.
The last chapter got to me. That was the nail in the coffin for me.
Yeah.
It basically was kind of a Requiem. You maybe thought prior to the epilogue, you thought she was maybe going to start going on this journey of, finding herself outside of being an assassin. You thought maybe Ryan had softened her up and they were going to start this new life together. And then the epilogue just undid everything that you maybe thought was going to happen.
Exactly. And I think for me that's a big reason why Requiem didn't work, because you need that redemption arc.
Mm-hmm.
And throwing it out there, I mean, she didn't really have the greatest of setups, like, just to start. I mean, starting out as an assassin, kind of hard to redeem that. I feel like they did try by kind of showing what her character motivations were for why she did that. She's the Dexter of assassins, But she had a really, I think, she needed therapy. I mean, she had an unhealthy attachment to the mother figure or whatever her name was. But I mean, I think she didn't really grow. We didn't see any growth out of her. Because, like, to your point, she kind of seems like the same person at the end as she is at the beginning, and that makes it really tough to like her. But and also, you said it yourself, she had a lot of, I don't want to say toxic because I feel like that's overused, but she did have a lot of abusive tendencies. You do see little glimmers of, like, her showing not necessarily remorse, but showing that softer side of her, like, especially with Ryan's niece, and kind of their relationship. But it's not enough for me. She's just not redeemable. And I think that for me also is why I kind of didn't like Victoria from the Music in the Mirror, because she was also abusive in a different way completely, but I need that character arc, and I didn't see it out of her.
I think I would have actually preferred Requiem for Immortals had it not have had the epilogue. It would have been a completely different book to me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I can see that.
But also, on the side of maybe epilogues that didn't work, Music in the Mirror. Is it Music in the Mirror? Is that what
Yes, with Victoria,
Okay.
one of my least favorite ice queens.
I remember you and I having a long discussion about this when I first read it ages ago, and I needed it to stop at chapter 36. I can't remember
Yes.
how many chapters there are, but I don't know if there was a scheduling issue, if there was maybe pressure from a publisher or an editor or something. But from 36 onwards, it was a different book, an entirely different book.
And this just goes to show the importance of an editor. Because if you have a good editor, your editor would have told you your tone is completely off for that back end of the book. For me, even like before that, it still doesn't work because I really don't like Victoria. Because I do think she is extremely abusive. And it's even something that I think her and I'm struggling with names today. Her love interest. It's
Yeah.
even something that they bring up that she is abusive and she's not going to stop being abusive just because they're together. And it carries over into their actual relationship. Like, I understand in the context of work where you're like, I'm trying to push you in ways to get the best out of you, but there are ways to do that without being an abusive ass. I hate to talk about it like super early, but I feel like part of the issue was that Victoria was kind of getting not towards the end of her career, but she was very established and she's working with this younger woman who seems to be kind of, I hate to say, a younger version of herself. It's kind of narcissistic, but again, I don't want to overuse that term. I don't think she's a narcissist. I know that that term gets thrown around all the time, but she does really think highly of herself, and seeing this girl that's like her, she's like, oh, I can push her, she's like me. And then you're like, and you're attracted to that? Like,
Oh, I never thought about it from that perspective.
I'm gonna give you a sneak preview. When we talk about age gaps, that is one I bring up as one I don't enjoy. Because it seems like she is looking at her as, well, this is me just years
Like
ago.
a daughter figure.
Exactly. And it's kind of icky to me, but I think that's also why I don't like it as an ice queen, because there's a whole lot of psychology going on in the background that I don't even want to touch. And on this podcast, maybe we shouldn't. But she needs a therapist, because it is very much like she's putting all this pressure onto this girl because she's like, I can make these things better for you. And I wish somebody would have done this for me. And that's great in like a mentor-ish way. But when she's the person that you're also sleeping with and like want to be with, it's not super effective for me.
You just break my brain again. I feel like I hadn't even, I don't know if I'm just being completely naive. I hadn't even considered that aspect of their relationship.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want to give you any spoilers for our age gap thing, but I think also part of it comes from just the fact that there is, what, a 10-year age gap between you and I?
I'm 27.
Yep, 10-year age gap. So,
Yeah.
like, when you come at a book with an age gap, you're coming at it from a younger person's perspective, and so you're looking at it from that. I'm looking at it from the older person, and so I think that also is part of why I think about these things, is because I'm judging the older character. I'm gonna say that there's a lot to unpack in the age gap episode, because I know you and I are gonna have dueling opinions on that one.
Oh, I can't wait.
And I think it's just a lot of it comes from us being at different, like, that we have our own age gap, and so I think that's where a lot of that's gonna come from. But
Interesting.
I did actually add one other ice queen that I thought was really, really ineffective, and it comes down to the abuse that they put their partner through. Can't tell you the author because she doesn't have a lot of books, but this one is gonna get us canceled because I've talked about it on Reddit and I got downvoted to hell. JT London from Bloomtown, not an effective ice queen. She is supposed to be an ice queen, but I hated her.
Yes, I am also not a fan of JT London.
I think for me, and it doesn't just come down to how she treated Abby, because she is really abusive, and there's a whole Stockholm syndrome? Yeah, Stockholm syndrome that's going on with Abby having feelings for JT, even though she was kidnapped and everything. But the real big reason is because of how she treats the people that she supposedly does love.
Mhm.
Like the kids and Lewis. Yeah. She just straight up oh, spoilers if anybody hasn't. She straight up abandons them.
Yes. Yes, she does.
Like what is that? Like what are you doing? These people love you and you're supposed to care about them and you just
Hmm. Yeah. I did not like JT London as a main character, and I didn't necessarily want to read about her anymore in another book. I would much rather dedicate my time to characters I actually, you know, enjoy spending time with.
yeah. Yeah. No, and that's fair. But I don't know. That's just why I had a lot of problems with her. Because that's the hallmark to me of a good ice queen is that you see that softer side with others, and she just doesn't have a softer side.
No, even during their sex chapters, she was still quite abusive during sex.
I mean, I don't think she has a healthy relationship with sex as it is just because of her background. And again, not diving into that because it's spoilers obviously, but I mean, this is another character that I think could have benefited from therapy, even though, time period wise, there's no therapy options, but boy, she has a lot to unpack before she gets into a relationship with anybody else. Yeah. I think for me though, the hallmark is how she treats the people who have been with her for years. And some of them are kids, like how are you going to be that big of an ass to a literal child and have me want to like you?
Yeah, no, it's tricky. And I think my top 3 ice queens that I dislike are ones that border on the abusive side.
Exactly.
And that's the thing the 3 of them have in common, is that they tip over the scales into abusive or coercive, as opposed to just maybe standoffish and closed off.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really fine line that authors have to walk when they're like creating an ice queen, because there is that line between abuse and like having walls to keep people out so they don't hurt you.
Yeah, like I mentioned to you, I read a book last week and one of the main characters slapped her partner around the face during an argument.
Nope.
And then the partner that got slapped proposed to her that week. And I just think, what kind of precedent are you setting? And if you're telling them that it's fine to be horrible and physically and verbally abusive to your partner and still be rewarded with love and affection, then it's a big ick for me.
Yeah, and like I will commend an author for having like abuse in their books, because I feel like that's something that in especially the Sapphic community that we don't talk enough about, is that there are abusive relationships and that a woman can abuse another woman just as easily as a man. Like there's that whole stigma of like when you think about abusers you think men, unfortunately. But like I really think it's a great thing to show in a book that there are those relationships, but I think it's really dangerous when we elevate those to say, well, that's okay. Like no, it's not okay. And you don't have to accept that, and you shouldn't accept that. And I guess that's pretty much my take on Ice Queens. To all the listeners, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Sapphic Gaze. And this is us signing out.
Yeah, I'll see you for the next episode.
Later, guys.